On May 30th, 1987, Mary Mathis Davis, 29, left for lunch from her job at Lehner's Hardware, but never returned. The following day, her body was found behind the former Winn-Dixie at 802 East Center Street. Lexington Police Chief Robbie Ramage said investigators collected a variety of evidence from the scene, but at the time, there wasn't much technology to process DNA evidence, and the case remained unsolved. But recently, investigators resubmitted physical evidence and were able to identify a suspect through a comprehensive genealogical profile, which cooperated with other evidence. Investigators in 1987 collected evidence that at the time really didn't serve a lot of purpose, but the wisdom of collecting them is the reason why we are here today. That evidence wasn't viable in assisting the case until very recently. Ramage said after getting feedback on the submitted evidence from the State Crime Lab in 2022, investigators with the Lexington Police contacted the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigations, who partnered with Othram Inc. to build a comprehensive genealogy profile from the remaining DNA evidence. This profile was used to produce investigative leads in the case and ultimately in identifying the suspect. The suspect was identified as Russell Grant Wood of Lexington, who died in 2013 when he was 58 years old. If he had lived, he would have been charged with felony first-degree murder, felony first-degree kidnapping, and felony first-degree rape. Ramage said that Wood had previously been identified as a potential suspect, but evidence at the time was not sufficient to charge him with the crime. He said that it was believed Wood and Davis lived in the same area and knew each other, but didn't elaborate further. Members of Davis' family were present at the announcement on Tuesday, March 14th, including her sister Lisa Yates, her niece Lori Martin, and her daughter Tracy Cleary. Over the past 36 years, the family have continually questioned what kind of motive someone could have to commit such a heinous act of violence. Martin said the family are planning on celebrating Davis on what would have been her 65th birthday on February 12th at Forest Hill Memorial Park. Ramage said it was important to make sure investigators continue to search for the suspect in the murder of Davis, and it is a relief to be able to give the family some answers in the case. Martin said that although the past 36 years have been difficult, they will always remember Davis for who she was and the love her family has for her. A man convicted of 3 2005 murders strangled a woman to death in 2004. Metropolitan Police Department Lieutenant Jason Johansson said DNA evidence linked 48-year-old Norman Flowers to the killing of Keisha Brown, 28. In October 2004, Brown was found dead in a bathtub inside her apartment in the 700 block of East Flamingo Road. An autopsy revealed Brown had been strangled to death, stabbed, beaten, and sexually assaulted. According to Johansson, witnesses interviewed at the time provided a description of a possible suspect seen arriving at leaving the apartment, but that person was never identified. A review of Brown's case in July by Detective Dan Long led to a request for additional DNA testing of evidence located on Brown during her autopsy. Long had been part of a 2005 murder investigation in which Flowers was the suspect. Johansson said Brown's murder was similar to 3 from 2005 in that there was a sexual aspect to the crime, a similarity in how the deaths occurred and in how the bodies were placed. All of those together made Detective Long instantly believe that he was working another murder involving Norma Flowers. As Johansson spoke during a conference, members of Brown's family stood behind him, wiping tears from their eyes. Brown's daughter Kalia Brown briefly spoke through tears. Flowers in 2011 had entered an Alford plea for 2 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of 45-year-old Marley Coote and 24-year-old Rena Gonzalez. An Alford plea means Flowers didn't admit guilt but acknowledged prosecutors could prove their case against him. In exchange, prosecutors agreed to stipulate to 2 consecutive life prison terms without the possibility of parole. If Flowers had been convicted at trial, prosecutors were going to seek the death penalty. Coote was found inside her Russell Road apartment on May 3, 2005. She had been raped, strangled, and Flowers' DNA was discovered on her body. 8 hours later, Gonzalez was found dead in the same apartment complex. She had been strangled with a telephone cord. In October 2008, Flowers was convicted and given a life sentence in the 2005 murder of 18-year-old Sheila Quarles, the daughter of Flowers' former girlfriend. Quarles died in March 2005. Flowers had previously spent time in prison, had been paroled twice, and was out of prison for about 20 days when he killed Quarles. Jonathan said, "I would say by definition he does meet the definition of a serial killer." Las Vegas Justice Court records show that an arrest warrant was filed Thursday against Flowers on charges of sexual assault and open murder. Flowers remains at High Desert State Prison where he is serving the 3 life sentences. On the evening of August 6, 1975, Laurel Jean Mitchell left the Epworth Forest Church camp in North Webster, Indiana, where she worked at the snack bar, to meet friends at a nearby amusement park. She never made it. Mitchell's body would be found the following day in a nearby river. Alongside her was a class ring with the initials LJM. She was 17. The initial autopsy report ruled the cause of death in the homicide was drowning and indicated that her death occurred rapidly. According to a police affidavit filed in the Noble County Circuit Court, it said that she made a violent struggle to survive. For decades, police investigated the killing but were unable to solve it. Then, the Indiana State Police arrested 2 men who had been among the suspects for several years and who lived within driving distance of the crime scene. The men, Fred Bandy Jr. of Goshen, Indiana, and John Wayne Lehman of Auburn, Indiana, both 67, were charged with first-degree murder in the case. They appeared in Noble County Court on Wednesday and pleaded not guilty. After nearly 50 years and advancements in technology, DNA evidence provided the missing pieces of the puzzle to link the 2 men to the victim. Authorities said science finally gave us the evidence we needed, and credited the Indiana State Police Laboratory Division for its help in the case. He added, "We simply could not solve this case without advancements in technology." Over 5 decades, investigators from multiple state and local agencies tried to solve her murder, but to no avail. Captain Smith said Laurel's family would continue to suffer with no answers. Mitchell's younger sister, Sarah, was 12 years old when she was killed. In an interview with the New York Times, Sarah described their childhood in North Webster as typical before horror visited her family. But when Mitchell did not return home by curfew that night in August 1975, Sarah's family knew something was wrong, prompting an extensive search by the police, family members, and friends. The next day, a family friend picked Sarah up early from softball practice. They arrived home to a driveway full of police cars. All of the clothing and belongings found on Miss Mitchell's body had been preserved for DNA testing, including shoes, a sweatshirt, bra, underwear, and denim jeans. The immediate investigation by the Indiana State Police was able to determine that on the night of her disappearance, Mitchell was supposed to meet friends at Adventureland, which was on the north side of North Webster, about a half-mile walk from the church camp. At the time, the police interviewed a North Webster resident who reported what he thought sounded like someone slamming the trunk of a car, possibly an Oldsmobile. Another resident told investigators that she had heard several voices say, "Let's get," or "Let's get her." But the investigation proceeded in fits and starts. From 2013 to 2019, several witnesses came forward and told the police of instances, right after her murder, when Mr. Lehman or Mr. Bandy had admitted to killing Mitchell. In one of these instances, a woman who went on a date with Mr. Lehman said he discussed his involvement in a crime with Mr. Bandy and offered details that matched the anatomical findings in the autopsy report. In 2019, Captain Smith resubmitted some of Mitchell's clothing to the state laboratory for DNA testing. The findings produced a male DNA profile that was found on Mitchell's clothing. In addition to Mr. Bandy and Mr. Lehman, the investigation generated 3 other potential suspects. But all 3 of those additional suspects were eliminated as possible contributors of the DNA obtained from her clothing. Late last year, the Indiana State Police obtained a DNA sample from Mr. Bandy. On January 13th, the state laboratory found that Mr. Bandy was more likely to be the contributor of the DNA found on Miss Mitchell's clothing than any other person. There was no mention of a DNA match to Mr. Lehman in the affidavit. Police records also showed that Mr. Bandy drove a 1971 Oldsmobile at the time of Miss Mitchell's murder. Mr. Bandy has a previous record of child molestation. In 2001, he pleaded guilty to child solicitation and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. In 2016, he pleaded guilty to 2 counts of child molestation and served nearly 6 years. While the Indiana State Police declined to comment on the techniques used to solve Mitchell's murder, Ashley Hall, the director of the Forensic Science Graduate Program at University of California, Davis, said the method seemed to be a standard genetic identification technology used in crime labs called STR, or short tandem repeat. Mitchell's case is a good example of the power and evolution of DNA testing to assist in criminal investigation. The detective work to solve the case was unrelenting. Sarah noted how Captain Smith had carried around big books that detailed the names and addresses of everyone the authorities had interviewed over the years. There were over 1,000 names in there, she said. When Captain Smith called Sarah and her brother Bruce Mitchell to let them know they had arrested 2 men in their sister's murder, she was surprised, but mostly wished her parents had been alive to see it. It's been 47 years, she said, but right now it feels like yesterday. If you liked the video, please make sure you like, subscribe for more true crime content. Thank you.